All right. Well, since we're a couple minutes past 3:30, I will go ahead and get us started. Um, so again, welcome. My name is Shay Maresco. I'm the Assistant Director of Enrollment Management for the School of Medicine, and turn it over to Dr. Bonfield.
Hello and welcome. We're happy to talk about the Masters of Regenerative Medicine at Case Western Reserve University. So this webinar, I'm obviously doing the introduction now. I'm going to give you some background on Case Western Reserve and the National Center for Regenerative Medicine, where much of this work takes place. And then I'm going to focus a lot on some of the exciting stuff that's going on in regenerative medicine in terms of action, and that's harnessing the power of lab-grown tissue and what do we learn with that, and taking it clinically or commercially. So this is much about the Masters of Regenerative Medicine and entrepreneurship. We'll also go over the application process, and of course, we will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine research is number one in the nation and number 16 in the nation and number one in Ohio. We were ranked 27th in the world's top 100 universities by Time Magazine in 2026. And even as of today, we are ranked of one of the growingest colleges in terms of our expansions and what we're developing at Case Western. So the National Center of Regenerative Medicine, which is housed within the School of Medicine, is a platform to facilitate translational research, clinical application, commercialization of regenerative medicine products, tissue engineering, and cell-based therapeutics. It was established in 2004 with the support from the Ohio Frontier Fund by Dean Gerson, shown here, and now we have developed it into a much larger forum, which also includes our co-directors at our affiliate hospitals, which are literally close to being walking distance from our university. And that would be with Dr. Van Basen, Dr. Chan, and Dr. C at the University Hospitals, Cleveland Clinic, and Metro Health. So let's talk about harnessing the power of lab-grown tissue and how is 3D printing and lab-grown tissues are advancing patient care. So the concept of lab-grown tissues has a lot of different pieces to it. We think of it as tissue that is obtained from organs of humans and that can be used in a laboratory to mimic what looks like humans, animals, or a human body. So in this particular picture, this is a induced stem cells to emulate the development of a human heart. And this is by the University of Union. But the concept here is that taking, components of the human body, these are components that have stemness to them, and helping them develop along the different pathways to promote a tissue mimic that we can use to study disease or study how to correct disease. So in the Case Western Reserve standpoint, this can revolve around many different aspects of regenerative medicine. These organoid tissues, which is another piece, organoids are little pieces of tissue that mimics what a tissue might do as a response to gene therapy and therapeutic testing. We can talk about that a little bit as we go on. So how can stem cells from patients help? So here's a picture of a spinal cord, and the spinal cord was generated based upon some tissues that were obtained from some patients and given special cocktails so that they differentiate along a specific pathway. And the colors are relative to the different parts of the central nervous system. So what's very cool here is that the lab-grown tissue is showing you that it's a spinal cord mimic, right? But it also has cells that sort of emulate different pieces of that spinal cord. And utilizing these technologies, we can develop ways in which we can study how the spinal cord mimic can emulate what's happening in disease. So what do I mean by emulate the disease? Well, this can come from tissues let's say from a healthy donor or a healthy stem cell source, or it can come from a patient, so that you can do a comparative analysis between the healthy versus the patient version. So the tissue from some patients can give us special ideas about what's happening to cause the symptom of the disease, or we can learn about mechanisms behind disease which impose different manipulations, which can promote correction of the defect, like with gene therapy or with therapeutic development. Here at Case Western Reserve, we have an amazing contribution by our Dr. Paul Tazar for the Institute of Glia Sciences, with the mission to illuminate hidden goals of glias in disease and unlock eras of glia in medicine. And they use organoids and other stem cell type of technologies, iPS cells, induced pluripotent stem cells, to explore some of these mechanisms. Now we can also use these lab-grown tissues, if they're done the right way, to promote some components of reparative processes. So tissues from patients can be used to test new drugs. So I work in some studies with cystic fibrosis, and you can make organoids from cells obtained from patients with cystic fibrosis, and you can begin to use them to study how the different drugs actually impact the expression of the defect that's involved with the disease. Here we can see that tissue was actually grown in a dish using special mechanisms to begin to look like skin. And those skins can be used as grafts and to put on different injuries and such that patients might have. Now, at Case Western Reserve, Franco Kelsberg developed a company called Sleppy. This was a spin-off company right here from Case. And this is a product that takes the wound that you can see here on the hand and actually recovers it completely, which is actually now on that thumb side. So that wound actually covered that whole side. And you can see the improvement with his drug. So how does this relate to RGME, or the master's program that we have here at Case? Investigators and innovators across the Case campus and affiliates are breaking boundaries in bench to bedside research, innovation, commercialization, and clinical benefit. And students get to take advantage of that because you're exposed to these innovators and exposed to these developers. And these are all part of your classroom experiences as well. In Case Western Reserve's innovating technology and educational opportunities provide students with the infrastructure and mentorship. So let's say you were really interested in Franco's, generation of the Sleppies, then you could potentially have the opportunity to work in their lab or be exposed to some of those technologies. The interchange between faculty and inspirational medical contributions is renowned here. We have lots of different clinical trials, phase 1, developmental strategies that are not quite into clinical trial, and our students get to be involved right there at the very beginning or even in the translation. And part of the educational program at RGME is to provide students with the pieces that allow them to fit in wherever along that pathway they're the most interested in pursuing. So whether that's the bench side, whether it's translational and preclinical testing, or in the regulatory and quality components down to the translation into the clinical trial, or the commercialization and financial managerial components that are part of it, or the regulatory things that need to happen for it to ultimately get FDA approval to move on to the clinical piece. So these are really the promotion of a workforce that will become the next generation of game changers in the field. So Case Western Reserve was just awarded $6.1 million from the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering to advance body tissue engineering pieces. I was very fortunate to be involved in one of these initiatives called the Omega, and this was developing components that could be utilized in joint replacement that would improve over current medical versions of it. So the future of regenerative medicine, it's upward motion, it's logarithmic. expected to be worth 194 billion by 2032, up almost 34.6 billion in 2022. There's a growing need. There's a rise in chronic diseases as our population is getting older, and diseases that are associated with that, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and a need and demand for regenerative medicine continues to increase. And there's an emerging market interest in developing regenerative medicine. It's a global market. So it's not just here in the United States, it's all across the world, and with markets opening in Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. So the Masters of Science in Regenerative Medicine and Entrepreneurship program can be I've had students do it in a year. Generally, I would say it's a 1.5 to 2 year program if completed on a full-time basis. Part-time enrollment is also optional for an option to students. I like to work with students in whatever motif they have in terms of their life. It's highly customizable to your career goals through elective course selection with a focus on whether you're more STEM oriented, managerial focused, regulatory, commercialization, managerial, however those pieces work together. You get a chance to work in partnerships with renowned hospital partners such as the Cleveland Clinic and university hospitals and Metro Health, allowing students to gain research or internship experience prior to graduation. And students can see RGME practices in action through site visit experiences to different biotech companies, organization, and hospital areas. The course I'm running right now, we're going to 2 different institutions this week, experiencing how they approach the regenerative medicine products that they're focusing on. You also have the ability to earn micro-credentials throughout the program. Our program has embedded within it a certificate option for a certificate from the School of Law and the Weatherhead School of Management for enhancing your business perspectives and legalistic components. So now I'm going to leave it to Shay to talk a little bit more about how to apply for the program. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them at the end of the webinar.
Thank you. Sure. So the application process is very straightforward. It's pretty simple. So you will create an account through the application portal, which is just through the CWRU website. Within that account, we're going to ask you to upload a few things. The first of which will be a statement of purpose. This is typically 1 page, sometimes 2 pages. I wouldn't go over that, but it's just a chance to shine. It's a chance for you to tell the admissions committee about you, about your goals and why you want to join the program, what you hope to do with it. Of course, it's also a space if there was something you want to address on your transcript or resume, that's a space for that as well. But really, I use it as your chance to shine. That's what we're going to read first when reviewing an application. So next, you will upload your current resume or CV, as well as unofficial transcripts from any and all colleges attended. So what I mean by that is if one summer you took a class at a community college just to fulfill a credit, we'll need an unofficial transcript from that just to review the application. And then should you be admitted and choose to accept your admission, that is when you would work to have your official transcript sent to CASE. Lastly, we will need 2 letters of recommendation. You can have more than 2 submitted, but 2 is the minimum. And we do request those from professional references. So usually what we see students use for that would be advisors, professors, or in some case, supervisors. And the TOEFL or IELTS is needed for international candidates with some exceptions. The exceptions would be if you attended your undergraduate education in the States or at a institution where English was the primary form of or primary language of instruction. Or if the native language of your home country is English, then that would be another exception. But if there's any questions on that, we're happy to answer those. So the other piece of the admissions process would be an interview. So we call it an interview, but it's nothing to be stressed over. It's more of a conversation with Dr. Bonfield and I, just because there's pieces of the program that are easier to discuss in an actual conversation rather than over email or trying to have you pull it from the website. So it's just a chance for us to get a better understanding of your interest in the program, as well as us to share those more intricate pieces of the program and get a better understanding of, because it's so customizable, what type of elective courses you might want to take. And that will help Dr. Bonfield map out your time in the program better. So, because it's more of a conversation, it can take place either in person or via Zoom, and it can take place before or after you submit an application. So, if you want to have that conversation just to gather more information before even submitting an application, feel free to reach out to us and we can set that up. But if not, if you were to submit an application, we would reach out to you before we could release that decision. Admissions timelines. So we are past the spring start for 2026, but if anyone is interested in a spring 2027 start, then you would want to make sure that you submit your application by December 1st. If anyone is looking for a fall 2026 start, we are still accepting applications and we will accept those through August 1st. I will say that is pushing it close to the start of school. We start usually the third week of August is when classes start. So if you're local, that may work. However, if you are going to have to relocate to the Cleveland area, I would recommend applying by July 15th just to give yourself a little bit more cushion time in case you need to relocate. So the sooner the better, but absolute final deadline is August 1st. For my international candidates, there's no written deadline. You're welcome to apply up through August 1st, but because of visa processing, we strongly recommend applying by April 15th so that you can have your decision and have time to work to get your visa papers and relocation, any other components that might be needed to come to the United States to study. And that brings us to the end of our slides. So this last slide here just has our email, our website, and our LinkedIn. You're welcome to connect with us on LinkedIn. We share updates on any upcoming events, any regenerative medicine related stories that we see in the news. We will reshare those on there. So it's just a great place to stay connected with us for information. But with that, I will stop talking and we will open up the floor to questions, which I know we got several in advance, which I did pass along to Dr. Bonfield. But if anyone has any live, feel free to use the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen, and I will monitor that as Dr. Bonfield works to answer questions.
Thank you for those who submitted questions. I think I covered most of them within the program itself. I used them somewhat to sort of outline some of the opportunities that are already relevant here and sort of the status of using these tissue-grown supplements really for clinical endpoints. I think it's interesting to think about what do we term the supplementation process. So I think even if you wanted to consider even a supplementation of bone marrow transplant, that's in itself, right?
Okay, so we are getting some questions in the chat. So our first question is this a master's degree program? So yes, it is. It is a Master of Science program. Full name of the program is a bit of a mouthful. It is Master of Science in Regenerative Medicine and Entrepreneurship, which is why we often shorten it to RGME. Um, our next question is, I was wondering what the turnaround time would be if we have submitted the case application for our GME program this week. Awesome. So turnaround time, depending on if you've chatted with us for that interview or not, that's gonna kind of dictate turnaround time. Dr. Bonfield and I are try to be as quick as we can. So once we have that conversation, we try to move it through the pipeline as long as all of your application materials are uploaded. I'd say standard turnaround time is about 2 weeks. But if we can make it happen sooner, we do try to do that.
And I actually want to address the name of the program because it is a mouthful. I think what's interesting about the name, the reason it's a mouthful is because we're not just a STEM program. We are not about just being a STEM program. And so it makes it difficult for the name, right? Because we're about regenerative medicine, which is the most innovative component of the medical sciences right now. And really, the concept is not just about the development of those innovations and the translation of those technologies, but how do you really get them to where they need to get to? And so that's the entrepreneurship piece. You have to understand business management. You have to understand the legal components. You have to understand your marketplace and all of those other pieces that are an essential piece of understanding product development. And if you really wanted to think about it, of course, the program focuses a lot on regenerative medicine, but it's very applicable to pharmaceuticals. It's very applicable to other types of formats in terms of regulatory, just the concepts.
So while we give a few more minutes, if anyone has any other questions to pop into the chat, I did want to let our attendees know we do have an upcoming expo on April 10th. If you would like to come to campus and see our spaces, meet with Dr. Bonfield in person, that will be on Friday, April 10th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So it's a great opportunity, and you can register for that in advance through the website. Um, or just email me directly. I'm happy to answer any questions about it and assist you in getting registered if you want to come to campus and see us in person. Any other questions? I know we covered a lot, but we are happy to answer anything.
What a beautiful picture of Cleveland. It's a beautiful picture of Cleveland. We have so much to do here. And this sort of demonstrates what a great place to be.
All right. Well, looks like we got one. We got another question here. Yay. So I was wondering if RGME offers any support for those interested in building a startup within Case Western, such as incubators, funding, etc. Oh, Dr. Bonfield's gonna love that one.
Yeah, yeah. So we have all kinds of programs that support student innovation in terms of bench to bedside. We have our own little incubator. As a matter of fact, our students are visiting there. Not this coming week, the week after. We are visiting the incubator site, and I've had two students actually not only work within the incubator with their innovation, but also one of them became a manager of the facility to learn actually how to promote innovation and providing these types of opportunities. Funding, we have great partnerships with the Vail Institute of Entrepreneurship, and they offer tons of different competitions and programs for students to apply for different types of fundings to support their product. and a lot of support in terms of, how to write those proposals and how to write those, and also how to defend it and sort of do your pitch is what you want to do. Actually, I've had several students win the pitch contest. I've also had students apply for funding and receive that as well.
And we've had alumni take those ideas and go on and launch them after graduation too, on a larger scale. So,
Yes. I had a couple of students that came in, they already had an innovation, but they didn't know how to get it to where they needed to. And so they came in and they brought their innovation, and they found a partner, and there you go.
awesome. All right. Well, I will wrap us up here as we're getting on the 4 o'clock hour. But of course, if you have any questions that maybe you didn't want to ask live or they pop into your head later, just email us at that email on your screen right there, rgme@case.edu. We're happy to chat further. Um, but thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We hope that you learned something and found the information exciting. I know we had fun setting up this presentation for you. So thanks again, and we will chat soon.
Thank you so much for coming.